Charlotte, North Carolina, the site of a horrific murder of Irina Zalutska, refugee from Ukraine, stabbed on a Charlotte light rail by DeCarlo Brown. Horrific murder played out not just in front of all passengers on the Charlotte light rail, but for the nation across surveillance footage and social media. Those eyeballs, that stage, became the story for much of the media. The surveillance cameras themselves, the role of social media, and the reaction of many to seeing this horrific murder has, for Axios, for Politico, for CNN, become the story. As CNN's media critic Brian Stelter points out, yes, it's a bad murder. But what he's really noticing, what is really eye-popping, is the reaction of people that notice the races involved, notice the motivations, notice the statistics, notice the problem in America. Here's Brian Stelter.
This story has trickled up from local news to social media and now to the president's attention. And it's being used, as you said, Brianna, as a political symbol, with MAGA media calling for more forceful punishments and more incarceration. I have to say, some of the replies to Musk, some of the comments around this story are baldly racist, stoking fear of African Americans because this man attacked a white woman. The open racism on sites like X today, it's eye-popping. But there are also legitimate questions about this so-called career criminal, someone who had been a repeat offender. And those questions, I hope they're not lost amid all of the cesspool kind of comments on social media.
Comedian Norm Macdonald once said the biggest fear he has for another terrorist attack, killing thousands in the United States, would be the subsequent Islamophobia sweeping America. Of course, it was sarcasm. Of course, it was a joke. But seemingly in the business of making jokes, the media, I give you Brian Stelter, and CNN. The real problem here is you noticing. The real problem here is you seeing this footage. The real problem here is you drawing conclusions based not just off anecdote, but off of facts and stats. We have to have a conversation about race. We have to have a conversation about the truth and a conversation about Charlotte. In the wake of this horrific murder, Charlotte Mayor Vi Lyles made a point of suggesting this has to do with mental health. The system failed DeCarlo Brown. He was abandoned in his pursuit of mental health, abandoned by a system, painting him, therefore, as much a victim as Irina Zalutska. You see, no one is responsible for their actions. No one has agency. There doesn't exist in this world real evil. Now, what the failure was, according to the mayor of Charlotte, was a failure of the system and mental health. Mental health has become monopoly's get-out-of-jail-free card. Mental health has been society's excuse for every malady, both societal and individual. Why is that person incapable of being social? Why is that person a parasite on society? Why is that person not a functioning adult? Mental health. They didn't get the help that they needed. This is not to deny that there are problems of mental health in America. We've had that conversation. We'll continue to. I think there's notably a mental health problem among young men in America. I think there's increasing senses of isolation. I think there is increasing sense of disconnected from society, a loss of compassion, a loss of empathy, a loss of connectedness that leads to antisocial behavior, and in many cases, some of the worst of antisocial behavior. I think we fed into that mental health crisis by emboldening, by enabling. Oh, you think you might be the wrong gender? Here's a basket full of hormones. Oh, you're down? Maybe we should mute your emotions with SSRIs. I think we have lit flames under the tinder of mental health in this country. But it doesn't negate the existence of true evil. Evil has been present from the beginning of the human condition. From Genesis. We have had people in this world, amongst us, walking with society, walking with free people, looking to do ill, a lost moral compass, sociopathic, zero-sum game, in it out for number one. Evil exists in this world, and evil can't be blunted with an antidepressant. No, the problem isn't the system. In fact, the system enabled this murder in Charlotte. DeCarlo Brown, released from prison, arrested something like 14 times, 14 different mugshots. The latest, last January, a judge in Mecklenburg County letting him out on a written permission slip. This time, after several assault charges for abusing the 911 system, making fake calls to 911. And while out, commits this horrific murder. No, DeCarlo Brown wasn't failed by the system. Civilized people were failed by the system in North Carolina. And that's where we begin to tell the truth. The truth is, race is a part of this story, not just by observation, but by statistics, by a chronic problem in the United States. Yesterday, we shared with you the stats on interracial violence. We showed you how the media zooms in on white-on-black crime or officer-on-black crime and absolutely ignores the exponentially larger number of black-on-white crime. Those were just raw data numbers. They don't even adjust for population. They're not per capita. Everything when comparing groups should be reduced to per capita. How likely is this group? How prevalent is this to happen? Well, if you want to look at per capita numbers, then what you find is that violent crime is 31 times more likely to occur black on white crime than white on black crime. 31. 31x. And we've seen that play out over just the last couple of days, the last couple of weeks. Because DeCarlo Brown in North Carolina is simply one story. Over the weekend in Auburn, Alabama, a veterinarian gunned down, or actually axed down, horrible situation, a horrible story. Auburn University professor, reads the Daily Mail, stabbed to death while walking her dog with suspect facing the death penalty. I read, a suspected killer is facing the death penalty after a retired Auburn University professor was stabbed to death in a park while walking her dog in broad daylight. Beloved veterinarian Dr. Julie Gard Chanel, 59, found dead in a wooded area of Kiesel Park in Auburn, Alabama on Saturday. The suspect, a black male. There are others. There's one from California in the Pacific Palisades from a few years ago. And because he feels like the media won't tell the story, Elon Musk, often active on X, posts another story in May from Logan Frederica, a 22-year-old college student, visiting a friend in North Carolina when a career criminal, Alexander Dickey, went on a violent rampage. He broke into her friend's house and shot and killed her. Dickey had 40 prior arrests. In 2023, despite a long history of burglary, he was given probation for what should have been his third conviction. And he murders 22-year-old Logan Frederico. See, the issue is that recidivism and a failed justice system that puts criminals on the street is actually intricately tied to race.